Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take complex topics, dive into the sources, and pull out the key insights for you. Today, we're jumping into some really exciting paleontology news. Tongyanlong zhimingyi. It's a huge, new sauropod dinosaur discovered in China. Think of this as your fast track to getting up to speed. We've got scientific papers, news reports, even a Reddit thread, and some dino databases to sift through.
Absolutely. And our goal here isn't just to tell you what they found. We want to explore why this giant is such a big deal for understanding dinosaurs, especially those super long-necked sauropods. We'll look at its size, which is impressive, its family connections, and what it reveals about Earth, way back then.
Okay, let's get right to it. The big headline. Paleontologists in China have just announced this, well, absolutely remarkable new type of sauropod, a new genus and species.
That's right. Tongyanlong zhimingyi, it lived around 147 million years ago, so that puts it squarely in the late Jurassic period, and its fossils turned up in southwestern China, in the Sichuan Basin, specifically the Tongyan district of Chongqing.
Okay, but here's the part that really caught my eye, digging into the Reddit source. This thing was officially announced, now, in 2025, right?
Right.
But the main fossil, the holotype, was actually found way, way back in 1988 on a building site.
Yeah, it's surprising, isn't it?
It really is. Why the huge gap? Almost 40 years.
Well, it really shines a light on something quite common in paleontology, though maybe frustrating sometimes. That holotype specimen, TNM0254, yes, discovered in '88. But getting from digging a bone out of the ground to having it officially named and published, it's a long haul. You've got the careful excavation, then cleaning and preparing the bones, which can be super delicate, then the detailed scientific analysis, finding the funding for the research, and finally writing it up, getting it peer-reviewed and published. So yeah, lots of amazing fossils end up waiting in museum drawers for years, sometimes decades.
Wow.
Think about Australoposeidon, found in 1953, wasn't described until 2016. Or even Dorn raptor parts found way back in 1858, only got its name last year.
That definitely puts it into perspective, so it's not unusual then.
Not at all. It's part of the process, really. Patience is key.
Okay, so let's talk about the name itself. Tongyanlong zhimingyi. It sounds quite cool. What does it mean?
It's very fitting. Tongyanlong basically means dragon of Tonyan. That's a direct link to where it was found. And zhimingyi, that honors Dong Zhiming, a really famous and respected Chinese paleontologist. So it's a nice tribute.
A fitting name for a giant. So where does this dragon fit in the dinosaur family tree?
Good question. It belongs to the Mementosauridae family. That's an extinct family, obviously, within the sauropods. And sauropods, just as a quick reminder for everyone, those are the really huge four-legged plant eaters, the largest animals to ever walk on land. But Mementosaurids, they have a defining feature, something really special.
The necks, right? The incredibly long necks.
Exactly. Proportionally, their necks were extremely long. I mean, sometimes making up over half their total body length. It's kind of hard to even picture.
It's just astonishing. When did scientists first realize this was a distinct group?
The family Mementosauridae itself, it was formally named back in 1972. Two Chinese paleontologists, Yang Zongjin and Zhao Shijin, described Mementosaurus huchuanensis and established the family then. Now, Tongyanlong is the new kid on the block, but we can look at its relatives to get an idea of their lifestyle. For example, there's this unnamed Mementosaurid specimen, SGP-2069. Studies on it suggest these animals could weigh something like 25,000 kilograms. That's nearly 28 short tons. And they probably grew relatively slowly, reaching maturity around age 20, maybe living to about 31 or so. Gives you a sense of their life pace.
Okay, let's unpack the world it lived in. We know related dinosaurs like Mementosaurus and Omosaurus are found in the Suying Formation, which is a bit older, maybe 159 to 150 million years ago. But Tongyanlong comes from the Suying Formation. You said about 147 million years ago. Some sources place it a little earlier too, maybe 157, 150. What was that environment like?
All right, the Suying Formation paints a picture of the Sichuan Basin back then. Think lake shores, maybe shallow lakes. The rocks themselves are these distinctive purplish-red sandstones and mudstones. That tells us about the depositional environment. And it was teeming with life. We find fossils of small crustaceans called ostracods, freshwater clams, turtles, like Psiochelys tatsuensis, lungfish too, like Ceratodus suquenensis, and of course other big sauropods. Tongyanlong wasn't alone. It shared the space with Mementosaurus, Enuensis, and Zhimingyi.
So, a busy place.
Definitely. The whole region is really considered a major hotspot for sauropod diversity in East Asia during that time. Tongyanlong just adds another fascinating piece to that puzzle.
All right, the big question literally, How big was this thing? The numbers I've seen are just huge.
They are pretty impressive.
Estimates seem to range from 23 up to maybe 28 meters long. That's, what, 75 to 92 feet? Some reports narrow it down to 25 or 26 meters, so around 82 to 85 feet.
Yeah, those figures put it right up there among the longest dinosaurs known from Asia. It's nearly as long as its relative Mementosaurus, a true giant.
But how do they figure that out when, as you said, they don't have the whole skeleton? No skull, most of the neck is missing.
That's the challenge and the clever part of paleontology. You work with what you have. In this case, they have quite a bit of the spine, 3 vertebrae from the back, 6 from the tail, plus really important bits from the shoulder girdle, the scapula, that's the shoulder blade, and the coracoid, and significant parts of the hind limb too, partial tibia, a complete fibula, foot bones, even claws.
And these bones themselves were massive.
Oh, absolutely. That left scapula, the shoulder blade, it's nearly complete and measures 182 centimeters. That's almost 6 feet long.
Wow.
Yeah, it might actually be the biggest Mementosaurids scapula ever found. And the right fibula, a lower leg bone, is over 1 meter long, 103 centimeters. These are seriously hefty bones.
So how do you get from a 6-foot shoulder blade to an 85-foot dinosaur? What's the method?
It involves a bit of scientific detective work and careful comparison. Essentially, you look at more complete skeletons of closely related dinosaurs. In this case, they used Mementosaurus zhimingyi as a reference. Now, Zhimingyi is pretty well known, about 16 meters long, and its scapula is about 120 centimeters.
Okay.
So Tongyanlong's scapula is 182 centimeters, which is roughly 1.5 times longer. If you assume similar body proportions, which is a reasonable starting point for close relatives, you can scale up the total length. That calculation gives you a body length estimate around 23 to 24 meters, maybe 75 to 78 feet. So that's a more conservative estimate based on scaling.
And the weight?
Same principle. Scaling from M. zhimingyi's likely weight suggests Tongyanlong tipped the scales at roughly 26 to 28 metric tons. That's, somewhere between 57,000 and 62,000 pounds, a serious heavyweight. And even with the range in these estimates, they all point to Tongyanlong being a truly colossal animal. It really helps us understand sauropod gigantism, this trend towards enormous size that we see developing from the middle to the late Jurassic.
Beyond just its size, though, this discovery seems to be shaking things up in terms of where these dinosaurs lived.
That's right. It has potentially big implications.
It seems to challenge the idea that Mementosaurids were just stuck in East Asia, right? This discovery supports a more global distribution for them in the late Jurassic.
Exactly. For a long time, the thinking was that Mementosaurids were sort of an isolated group, endemic just to East Asia, particularly China. But we're finding more evidence that suggests otherwise. We now know of Suying from the Suying Formation in Tanzania, Africa. That's a definite Mementosaurid, far from China. Plus, there are other finds like a neck vertebra from Thailand, and the Suying Formation, and some fossils from the Itat Formation in Russia, Siberia. These scattered finds hint that they might have been much more widespread, maybe even surviving into the early Cretaceous in some areas.
So this really pushes back against that East Asian isolation hypothesis.
It does. That hypothesis suggested the whole Sichuan Basin fauna was unique and cut off during the Jurassic and early Cretaceous. But newer analyses, looking at the evolutionary relationships, plus these fossils popping up elsewhere, including Tongyanlong fitting into this broader picture, it suggests a much more connected world for these giants than we previously thought.
Is that idea of a global distribution now widely accepted, or is there still some debate about, say, that Thai vertebra or the Russian finds? Are they definitely Mementosaurids?
That's a fair question. Science always involves scrutiny. And yes, especially with isolated bones like that single vertebra from Thailand, there can be debate about its precise identity. Is it definitely a Megasaurid or something else convergent? However, the evidence from more substantial remains like at Africa is pretty strong. So while maybe not every single proposed fossil outside China is universally agreed upon yet, the overall trend and the weight of evidence are definitely shifting the consensus towards a much wider, possibly global distribution for the family. It's an evolving picture.
Fascinating stuff. Okay, let's go back to that incredible defining feature, the neck. It's just mind-boggling. We mentioned Mementosaurus sinocynodorm earlier. Estimated neck length of almost 50 feet, 49.5 feet, supported by 18 vertebrae. Longer than Xinjiang Titan's neck? How on earth did they hold that up?
It's a brilliant example of evolutionary engineering, isn't it? They had several key adaptations. One major factor was, believe it or not, air. CT scans of their neck vertebrae show they were incredibly hollowed out. We're talking 69 to 77% air, much like the bones of modern birds. This made the neck significantly lighter than if it were solid bone.
So like internal scaffolding, but filled with air.
Precisely. Reduces the weight dramatically. Then they also had these incredibly long overlapping cervical ribs, neck ribs. Some were up to 13 feet long themselves. These acted like reinforcing rods running alongside the vertebrae, providing stiffness and stability, and probably reducing the risk of injury.
Okay, lighter bones, extra support ribs. What about posture? Did they hold them straight up?
Probably not. Biomechanical studies suggest they likely held their necks at a relatively shallow angle, maybe 20 to 30 degrees above the horizontal. Holding it straight up would have been energetically very costly and put immense strain on the base of the neck. This lower angle was likely much more sustainable for managing that incredible weight and length.
And all this was for reaching food, presumably, high up in the trees.
That's the prevailing theory. As high-browsing herbivores, that super long neck was like a built-in feeding crane. It allowed them to sweep across huge arcs of vegetation, reeking leaves in forest canopies, or maybe foraging along lake edges, all without having to move their massive bodies too much. We don't have Tongyanlong's skull, but based on relatives, they probably had simple peg-like teeth, good for stripping foliage, not for heavy chewing.
And what about their lives? I know it's speculative, but based on other sauropods? Maybe living in herds? Migrating?
It's reasonable to infer some of that, yes. Many large sauropods show evidence suggesting social or herd behavior, maybe for protection or finding resources. Seasonal migrations are also possible, especially for finding enough food and water to sustain such large bodies. And of course, their sheer size would have been a pretty effective defense against most predators of the time. Being that big is its own deterrent.
What an incredible picture. So, wrapping things up for today's deep dive. We've gone from this amazing story of a fossil found decades ago on a building site, the understanding Tongyanlong zhimingyi as one of Asia's longest dinosaurs, a member of the Mementosauridae family with those unbelievably long necks. We've seen how it fits into the ancient Sichuan Basin ecosystem and how its discovery helps challenge older ideas about dinosaur distribution, suggesting these giants were more widespread than we thought. And we've marveled at the engineering of that neck.
It really highlights how each new discovery, even from partial remains like Tongyanlong, can add so much to our understanding. It enriches the picture of sauropod diversity, especially during the late Jurassic. And it reinforces the Sichuan Basin as this incredible cradle of sauropod evolution. There's clearly still so much to learn from that region.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Considering Tongyanlong waited nearly 40 years in a collection before being formally studied and named, how many other incredible discoveries might already be sitting in museum drawers? Or are still out there, buried, just waiting for the right moment, the right eyes, to completely change what we think we know about life on this planet?